Fat Ass 45's desperate, raging debate performance not only laid bare the bullying, racism, and contempt for science, and in fact that tore deep divides over the last 4 years, it actually inflamed America's four great crises at a moment of the deep national peril, leaving voters with their starkest election choice in decades. It would have been an extraordinary self-pitying and savage performance from a down ballot candidate, but for a fat ass who's in control of the nuclear codes and is supposed to be navigating the country through the worst health emergency in 100 years, the most punishing economic slump in 90 years, and the deepest racial reckoning in 50 years, it was troubling in the extreme. On top of all that, Fat Ass 45 is warning that he would not accept the results of the election if he loses, displayed authoritarian instinct that are creating a fourth crisis by putting U.S. democracy itself on the line. Um, Fat Ass 45's behavior in his clash against Democratic nominee Joe Biden was responsible for easily the worst and most rancorous presidential debate in American history. The fat ass bulldozed into the event, seeking to rescue his trailing campaign by seeking to blow Biden away with a torrent of attacks. And for a while, it looked like it might work. He turned the event in Cleveland into an off the rails 90-minute metaphor for his failed squadancy, breaking all the rules, trying to bully Biden, and overwhelming moderator Chris Wallace of Faux News, flinging lie after lie, while behaving like an agitated real-life version of his wild and trolling Twitter feed. His refusal to condemn the Nazis and KKK members and direction to the neo-fascist group Proud Boys to stand back and stand by was shocking in such a venue, but that it was hardly surprising given the last 4 years underscored the stakes of the approaching election, and he utterly failed to accomplish his core goal for broadening his support in a race in which he is trailing. The squatter-in-chief refused to condemn white supremacy on the global stage in front of the children, in front of everybody's family, and he was given the opportunity multiple times to condemn white supremacy, said Van Jones, who's a CNN commentator and former Obama administration advisor, but he also worked at Fat Ass 45's White House on criminal justice reform. Inadvertently, Fat Ass 45's blow-ups played into the central argument Biden and a small band of dissident Republicans are trying to sell to half the country. That is not a loyal 45 nutlicker or inclined to support him. That is whether the misbehavior and personal lawlessness displayed by Fat Ass 45 on Tuesday night is appropriate in a fat ass and offers an escape from desperate times. The clash between the two men dueling for the White House on November 3rd didn't merit the term debate. CNN's Dana Bash accurately described the conflagration as a shit show, but there was only one candidate to blame for that. Fat Ass 45 blasted through the rules agreed by his campaign for equal time. Biden's attempt Biden's Biden's attempts to get a word in just led to confusion and noise. If he waited the fat ass out, fat ass just went on a tear, with Wallace haplessly trying to rein him in, like all White House aides have for years. It says, "Will you?" And basically, because fat ass, what if I wouldn't shut the fuck up? It prompted, um, it prompted Biden to basically tell him shut the fuck up, and basically but it says, "Will you shut up, fat ass?" The Democratic nominee, who mostly resisted fat ass whatever was goading, snapped at one point for a moment, behaving more like a frustrated viewer who might have turned in to hear clues about how the fat ass plans to navigate America through a moment of national peril. Fat ass 45 had no answers. I'm trying to spin the pandemic, blaming it all on China, claiming millions more would have died had Biden been president, undermining masks and vowing to overrule his science on whether a coming vaccine was safe. Biden playing the role of a conventional politician causing a demagogic tsunami wasn't especially impressive, and at times it lacked gravitas itself. By blasting 45 as he blasted Fat 45 as a clown, a full and Putin's puppet. His answer on the vacant Supreme Court seat of the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg won't exactly have Democrats rushing to the polls to support his moderate campaign. But while the debate was a disservice to democracy, Biden was not an equal offender in sending it into the gutter. Coming into the evening with a polling lead, the 77-year-old former vice president's main task was to give the lie to Fat Ass 45's claim that he barely knows where he is and can't string two words together. He certainly did that, showing energy right through to the end of the debate. He could hardly fail to look more statesmanlike than the raging tantrum across the stage. And on the pandemic, the economy, and on race, the Democratic nominee aimed some substantial jabs against the fat ass, turning to address Americans watching at home directly. If anything, millions of viewers were able to hear from them above the see, I'm trying to. Basically, fat ass ratified doesn't have a plan. The fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about, Biden said, condemning the fat ass's efforts to eradicate Obamacare without providing a realistic alternative. How many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the table because someone died of COVID-19, Biden asked, blaming fat ass 45 for his mishandling of the virus for thousands of U.S. deaths. And it is what it is because you are who you are, he told fat ass 45. A CNN poll of the debate watchers handed the night to Biden by a wide margin. 60% of the respondents said that Biden won, while only 28% gave the night to fat ass 45. But the debate will not be remembered for Biden's performance, which was less impressive than Hillary Clinton's 4 years ago. Unusually, the question coming out of the debate is not who won and who lost. Sometimes it takes days for the exchanges between two amped-up candidates to percolate through the public opinion, and the winners of the first debates have often not ended up repeating their victories at the polls, including Democrats like John Kerry and Hillary Clinton and Republican Mitt Romney. But any reasonable analyst of the evening must ask whether Fat Ass 45 destroyed his own squadency in hopes of a second term with a seriously over-torqued performance, and whether he can repair some of the damage in the two subsequent debate clashes with Biden. One of the Republicans who took on the impossible task of trying to prepare an uncontrollable fat ass for the debate admitted on ABC News that his candidate had come on far too strong. It was too hot. Listen, you come in, decide you want to be aggressive, and I think that was the right thing to do, was to be aggressive, but that was too hot, said former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. With all that heat, you lose the light that potentially can be fixed, but maybe not. We have to see on the fat ass 45 side. The Democratic Vice President nominee, Senator Kamala Harris of California, told CNN's Jake Tapper that the American people had seen on screen what they have now as a president and what Biden could bring. Basically, I wouldn't call Fat Ass 45 a president because he's not one. I heard what we all heard. The fat ass of the United States in the year of our Lord 2020 refuses to condemn white supremacists, she said. Fat Ass 45's unshakably loyal nutlookers likely loved his refusal to bow to debate rules, just like they warmed up to his subversion of all the norms and traditions of the squadency. They will also warm to his invective and insults. The idea that Fat Ass 45, like any other politician, which he's not really a politician anyway, channels their anger at Washington politicians like Biden, who they believe backed trade deals that sent their jobs overseas, will remain powerful. And Fat Ass 45's rhetoric on culture and race is a powerful motivating force for his grassroots voters. Every Biden misstep and some clumsy answers on issues such as climate change and mail-in ballots will also be relentlessly highlighted by Fat Ass 45's so-called friends. He doesn't have any friends, but yeah. In the conservative media, in that sense, the aftermath of the debate will be an appropriate reflection of the country, internally estranged. But Fat Ass 45's task heading into the evening was to repair his ebbing support, especially in swing states with suburban and especially women voters. It doesn't seem likely that the flame-throwing performance by a 74-year-old baby child was the way to accomplish that goal. Fat Ass 45's tactics, such as they were, seem to be in line with his campaign's insistence that there is a silent majority of Fat Ass 45 voters who will flock to the polls and will overwhelm the conventional Washington wisdom again. If they are right, he still has a chance to cut Biden's lead in swing states. The Fat Ass's best moment of the night came when he appeared to silence Biden with his relentless attacks on law and order, but as often been the case, he might have ruined his victories with his own extreme instincts. Asked by Wallace and by Biden, who sensed an opening to condemn white supremacy, he couldn't bring himself to do, and instead he equivocated on the Proud Boys group, a far-right neo-fascist organization, much as he did when asked to pick a side in the white extremist activists in Charlottesville, Virginia. Basically, he said, Proud Boys, stand back, stand by, Fat Ass 45 said. Shockingly, Fat Ass 45 reinforced his threats to refuse to concede a possible loss in the general election, and indicated that he would very much like the Supreme Court, including his nominee, the dumb cunt Amy Coney Barrett, to decide the result in what would likely mean the country's worst ever constitutional crisis. He asked his inbred supporters to go to polls and watch very carefully about what happens while making fresh and substantiated claims of mass ballot fraud. Now, what he just told his supporters do, what he just told his inbred supporters to do there is fucking illegal. You can't do that. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. Fat ass 45 said, yeah, but you're the one that's trying to manipulate this fat ass. Biden, in another of his to-the-camera moments, pleaded with Americans to take the election seriously and make their votes count. This is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he is trying to scare people into thinking that's not going to be legitimate. Biden said, "It's votes he can't stand power. It won't happen." Badass 45 made it clear on Tuesday night that he would do anything that he can to cling to power and that he won't go quietly. The next 5 weeks are now certain to be even more tumultuous than it had already been the case. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, Rampant Mike, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And thanks for listening.